The morning rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Hawthorne Technologies as Holofera stepped into the marble lobby. Her worn canvas bag contrasted sharply with the gleaming steel and glass surrounding her. She had spent the previous night practicing her introduction, rehearsing answers to potential questions, trying to calm the butterflies that refused to settle in her stomach. This job meant everything. The salary would cover her brother Timothy's medical treatments, and maybe, just maybe, leave enough for her to finish her art degree. The elevator rose silently to the 40th floor, depositing her into a reception area that screamed wealth and power. Chrome fixtures caught the gray morning light, and abstract paintings that probably cost more than her entire apartment decorated the walls. A sharp-faced receptionist barely glanced up as Holofera approached. "I'm here to see Mr. Hawthorne. I'm the new personal assistant." The woman's eyes swept over Holofera's simple dress and practical shoes with thinly veiled disdain. "Through those doors, he's expecting you." Julian Hawthorne sat behind a desk carved from a single piece of black walnut, his attention fixed on multiple computer screens. He didn't look up as Holofera entered. She waited, feeling the seconds stretch into an uncomfortable eternity. Finally, he raised his eyes, and she felt the full force of his scrutiny. His features were sharp and aristocratic, his dark suit perfectly tailored, and his gaze held the coldness of someone who had learned to trust no one. "You're late," he said flatly. Holofera glanced at her phone. "Sir, I'm actually 3 minutes early." In my world, early is on time. On time is late. His voice carried no warmth, only assessment. "I've read your resume. Art student, part-time waitress. No relevant experience. Tell me why I shouldn't end this interview right now." She straightened her shoulders, meeting his challenging stare. "Because I'm honest, hardworking, and I learn fast. I don't make the same mistake twice, and I don't give up easily." Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. Everyone says they're honest until the price is right. Everyone claims they're hardworking until something better comes along. Words are cheap. Then judge me by my actions, not my words. For 3 weeks, Holofera proved herself through those actions. She arrived before Julian each morning, organized his chaotic schedule with quiet efficiency, and anticipated his needs before he voiced them. She never complained about the long hours or his curt responses. She learned the names of his key partners, memorized his coffee preferences, color-coded his calendar system until it ran like clockwork. Yet Julian remained distant, his comments laced with suspicion. When she stayed late to finish a presentation, he remarked that she was probably trying to impress him. When she declined an expensive lunch with a vendor, he suggested she was playing hard to get. Each small act of professionalism was twisted into evidence of ulterior motives. Mrs. Patterson, Julian's elderly housekeeper who occasionally visited the office, was the only person who showed Holofera genuine kindness. The silver-haired woman would bring homemade cookies and share stories about Julian's childhood, painting a picture of a boy who once believed in people before the world taught him otherwise. "He wasn't always like this," Mrs. Patterson confided one afternoon over tea. "His mother abandoned the family when he was 12. Then his fiancée Camilla took millions from him before disappearing with his former best friend. The betrayals changed him." Holofera felt a pang of sympathy, but it didn't excuse his treatment of her. She was tired of being judged for crimes she hadn't committed, tired of having her integrity questioned at every turn. The breaking point came at the annual Hawthorne Foundation Charity Gala. Julian had insisted Holofera attend to manage the silent auction logistics. She wore her only formal dress, a simple navy gown she'd found at a thrift store. Among the designer labels and dripping jewels, she felt like an imposter. Julian arrived with a stunning woman on his arm, a corporate attorney named Veronica, who treated Holofera like part of the furniture. Throughout the evening, Holofera coordinated with the caterers, ensured the auction ran smoothly, and handled the technical glitch with the sound system. She was exhausted but satisfied that everything had gone perfectly until Julian's speech. "I want to thank my team for making tonight possible," he said from the stage, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "Though I've learned the hard way to keep a close eye on those who handle money. Some people see charity work as an opportunity rather than a calling." His gaze landed on Holofera for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Conversations around her stuttered. eyes turned in her direction. The implication hung in the air like poison. She felt her face burn with humiliation. Her hands trembled as she set down her clipboard. Everyone in the room now thought she was a thief, or worse, that Julian suspected her of being one. The careful professional reputation she had built crumbled in an instant. Rather than cause a scene, Halafera slipped out to the terrace. The cold night air bit at her bare arms, but she welcomed the physical discomfort as a distraction from the emotional pain. She leaned against the railing, fighting back tears. Maybe her mother had been right. Maybe she didn't belong in this world of glass towers and seven-figure bank accounts. That was subtle, a voice said behind her. She turned to find an older gentleman in a distinguished tuxedo. His kind eyes and warm smile reminded her of her late father. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Julian's little performance? I've known that boy since he was in diapers. His bark is worse than his bite, but that doesn't make it hurt any less." He extended his hand. "Theodore Blackwell, board member and family friend?" "Halafera Chen," she managed, shaking his hand. "I've been watching you tonight, my dear. Watching how you handle problems without drawing attention. How you treat the staff with respect. How you keep everything running without needing credit or recognition. Those aren't the actions of someone chasing money." His words unlocked something inside her. The tears finally came, quiet and unstoppable. Theodore handed her his handkerchief. "Julian's been hurt badly. He sees threats everywhere now, especially in people who might actually care about him. But I suspect you already know that. Knowing why doesn't make it easier to endure." "No, it doesn't. But perhaps understanding his wounds will help you decide whether he's worth the effort of proving him wrong." Halafera remained on the terrace, turning his words over in her mind. She thought about Julian's occasional moments of vulnerability. The times she'd caught him staring at family photos with profound sadness. The way he'd quietly doubled the salary of an employee facing medical bills. There was good in him, buried under layers of protective cynicism. The question was whether that good was worth fighting for, or whether she should protect her own heart and walk away while she still could. The crisis began on a Tuesday morning with a single email that turned Julian's world upside down. A major investor had pulled out of their latest project, citing concerns about market volatility. Within hours, 3 more followed suit, leaving a $100 million development in jeopardy. The technology center that was supposed to revolutionize renewable energy storage now faced cancellation. Along with hundreds of jobs, Halafera watched Julian transform from controlled businessman to barely contained chaos. He barked orders into his phone, paced his office like a caged animal, and dismissed 3 department heads who couldn't provide immediate solutions. By noon, his typically immaculate desk was buried under reports and projections. "Cancel everything for the rest of the week," he snapped at her. "Get me Roberts from legal, Chen from finance, and someone who actually knows how to save a sinking ship." "Already done," Halafera replied calmly. "Roberts is reviewing the contracts for exit clauses. Chen is preparing alternative funding scenarios, and I've scheduled calls with 4 potential replacement investors. Your first call is in 10 minutes. Julian stopped pacing, staring at her as if seeing her for the first time. "When did you arrange all this?" "When the first email came through? I know you hate being caught off guard, so I started preparing contingencies immediately." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the armor. "Thank you." They were simple words, but coming from Julian Hawthorne, they felt monumental. The next 72 hours blurred together in a marathon of conference calls, emergency meetings, and endless coffee. Halafera worked alongside Julian, anticipating his needs, organizing information, occasionally offering quiet suggestions that he, surprisingly, began to consider. She watched him at 2 in the morning, tie loosened and shirt sleeves rolled up, and saw not the cold billionaire but a man fighting desperately to save something he believed in. On the 3rd night, as they reviewed proposals in his penthouse office, Julian's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and immediately silenced it, but not before Halafera caught a glimpse of the name Camilla. "You don't have to answer it," she said softly. He laughed bitterly. "She only calls when she wants something. Money, usually. Or to remind me what a fool I was." "You weren't a fool for trusting someone you loved, wasn't I? She stole $3 million and disappeared with my college roommate. If that's not foolish, I don't know what is." He rubbed his eyes, Exhaustion, making him more honest than usual. You want to know why I've been so hard on you? Why I question everything you do. Holofera set down her pen, giving him her full attention. Because you're exactly the type of person I would have fallen for before. Kind, hardworking, genuine. Or at least, that's what Camilla seemed like too. She played the role perfectly for 2 years. I didn't see through it until my accountant found the discrepancies. He stood, walking to the windows that overlooked the glittering city. So when you showed up with your thrift store clothes and your earnest work ethic, every alarm bell in my head went off. I'm not her, Holofera said firmly. I'm starting to realize that. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Patterson arrived at the penthouse the next morning with breakfast, as she'd done for decades. She found them both asleep at the conference table, surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. She woke them gently, clucking her tongue at Julian's appearance. You look terrible, dear boy. When did you last eat a proper meal? I don't remember, Julian admitted. Accepting the plate of eggs and toast she offered, Mrs. Patterson turned to Holofera with concern. And you, child? Are you taking care of yourself? I'm fine, Mrs. Patterson. Thank you for asking. The housekeeper studied her for a long moment. You know, I've worked for this family for 35 years. I've seen assistants come and go, each one trying to climb the ladder or snag themselves a wealthy husband. But you're different. You actually care about the work, don't you? I care about doing things right, Holofera replied honestly. My brother Timothy has a rare autoimmune disorder, Holofera said quietly, not looking up from her breakfast. The treatments are experimental and expensive. This job means he gets to stay in the program. It means he gets to keep fighting. Julian froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. You never mentioned a brother. You never asked about my personal life. You made it clear we weren't here to be friends. The words hung in the air. A gentle rebuke that struck harder than any accusation. Mrs. Patterson squeezed Holofera's shoulders supportively before leaving them alone. Julian set down his fork, his appetite suddenly gone. How old is he? 16. He's brilliant, funny, and terrified he won't live to see his 18th birthday. The treatments are working, but they're draining our savings faster than I can replenish them. She met Julian's eyes steadily. That's why I work so hard, Mr. Hawthorne. Not to steal from you or manipulate you, but because every paycheck means my brother has a future. He felt something crack open in his chest, a pain that was somehow cleansing. Why didn't you tell me this during your interview? Because I wanted to be hired for my skills, not your pity. I don't want charity. I want to earn what I'm paid. Julian stood abruptly, walking to the window. The morning sun was painting the city gold, and he felt the weight of his own cruelty crushing down on him. He had spent weeks tormenting this woman, questioning her integrity, publicly humiliating her, all while she carried a burden that would have broken most people. I've been a complete bastard to you, he said quietly. Yes, you have. Her honesty surprised a laugh out of him, short and sharp. Most people would try to soften that. You said you wanted actions, not words. Well, the action of pretending you haven't hurt me would be dishonest. He turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw genuine remorse in his eyes. If I could take back the gala speech, I would. If I could erase every suspicious comment and doubtful look, I would. You've been nothing but professional and dedicated, and I've treated you like a criminal waiting to strike. Why the change of heart now? Because I've watched you for 3 days straight. I've seen how you handle pressure, how you think 10 steps ahead, how you never complain, even when you're exhausted. And I heard you on the phone with your brother yesterday. Holofera's eyes widened. She'd taken a quick call during a bathroom break, thinking no one could hear. You told him not to worry about the bills, that you had everything under control. You told him to focus on getting better, that you'd handle the rest. Your voice was so gentle, so full of love. Julian's own voice roughened with emotion. That's not the voice of someone scheming for money. That's the voice of someone who knows what actually matters in life. Tears pricked Holofera's eyes, but she blinked them back. I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me make it up to you. Not because I'm your boss, but because you deserve better than how I've treated you. Before she could respond, his phone rang. It was Theodore Blackwell with news that one of the investors he'd contacted was interested. The crisis wasn't over, but hope flickered back to life. Over the next week, as they worked to save the project, something fundamental shifted between them. Julian started asking about Timothy, about Holofera's abandoned art studies, about her dreams beyond survival. She began to see glimpses of the man Mrs. Patterson had described. Someone capable of warmth and humor when he wasn't hiding behind walls. One evening, after successfully securing a new investor, Julian insisted on driving Holofera home. Her apartment was in a neighborhood his GPS seemed uncertain about, a far cry from his penthouse. When she invited him up to meet Timothy, he accepted without hesitation. The apartment was tiny but immaculate, filled with Timothy's artwork and medical equipment. The teenager was thin and pale, but possessed a smile that could light up the room. "So you're the famous Mr. Hawthorne," Timothy said, shaking Julian's hand. "My sister talks about you constantly." Holofera's face flushed crimson. "What do you do?" "Mr. Hawthorne needs this. Mr. Hawthorne wants that. I was starting to think you'd invented him." Julian laughed, genuinely amused. "I assure you, I'm very real. And your sister's being modest. She's the one keeping my entire company running smoothly." They spent an hour talking, and Julian found himself captivated by Timothy's perspective on life. The boy spoke about his illness with matter-of-fact courage, about his dreams of becoming a graphic designer, about how proud he was of his sister's strength. As Julian prepared to leave, Timothy caught his arm. "Take care of her, okay? She never takes care of herself because she's too busy worrying about me." "I promise," Julian said, and meant it. In the car afterward, Julian sat in silence, processing everything he'd seen. Holofera waited, unsure what he was thinking. "I've been living in a fortress of my own making," he finally said, "keeping everyone at arm's length because I was afraid of being hurt again. But watching you with Timothy tonight, seeing the life you've built, despite impossible circumstances, I realized something." "What's that?" "That being afraid to trust is just another way of letting Camilla win. She took my money and my pride, but I let her take my humanity too. I don't want to be that person anymore." Holofera reached over and squeezed his hand. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like a bridge being built between two isolated islands. "Then don't be," she said softly. "You get to choose who you want to become." As Julian drove back to his empty penthouse that night, he realized that, for the first time in years, he didn't feel quite so alone. The attack came from where Julian least expected it. Vincent Carver, a rival tech mogul who had lost a major contract to Hawthorne Technologies, decided that if he couldn't beat Julian in business, he would destroy him personally. The weapon he chose was HOL of AIRA. It started with whispers in industry circles, then anonymous posts on financial gossip sites, photos of Holofera entering Julian's penthouse late at night, carefully cropped to remove context, fabricated stories about a struggling art student seducing her way into a billionaire's bed and bank account. The narrative was designed to humiliate them both while painting Holofera as exactly what Julian had once accused her of being. Julian first learned about it from Theodore Blackwell, who called him with barely contained fury, "Have you seen what they're saying about that girl? It's character assassination, pure and simple. Vincent's fingerprints are all over this." Julian pulled up the articles on his computer, his blood turning to ice as he read. They had taken innocent moments, working late, shared car rides, his visit to her apartment, and twisted them into something sordid. The comment section was even worse, filled with people who didn't know Holofera but felt entitled to judge her. "I'll sue every publication that printed this garbage," Julian snarled. "I'll just give the story legs. You need to get ahead of this, and you need to protect her." "Where is she now?" "She called in sick this morning, said she had a migraine." Realization hit him like a truck. She's already seen it. Julian was out the door within minutes, driving too fast through morning traffic to reach Holofera's apartment. He pounded on the door until Timothy answered, his young face tight with worry. He won't come out of her room. "She's been crying since last night." Julian's heart clenched. "Can I see her?" Timothy hesitated, then nodded. "Room on the left. But be warned, she's really upset." He found Holofera curled on her bed, still in yesterday's clothes, her eyes swollen from tears. The laptop beside her displayed one of the vicious articles. When she saw him, she sat up quickly, trying to compose herself. You shouldn't be here. It'll just make things worse. I don't care what anyone thinks. I came to make sure you're okay. Okay? Her laugh was hollow. My name is being dragged through the mud across the internet. People I've never met are calling me a gold digger, a manipulator, worse. My professors have seen this. Timothy's doctors have probably seen this. And it's all lies. But that doesn't matter, does it? The damage is done. Julian sat on the edge of the bed, careful to leave space between them. Vincent Carver is behind this. He's trying to hurt me through you. Then he succeeded. Because I can't work for you anymore. Every time we're seen together, it'll just fuel the story. I'll find another job somehow. I'll manage. No. The word came out harder than he intended. You're not quitting. You're not letting him win. This isn't about winning. Holofera's voice broke. This is about my reputation, my dignity. I've worked so hard to build a life, to support Timothy, to prove that I'm more than my circumstances. And now everyone thinks I'm exactly what you accused me of being on my first day. The reminder of his own cruelty hit Julian like a physical blow. I was wrong about you. Completely inexcusably wrong. Being wrong in private is one thing, but this is public. This is permanent. Years from now, when someone searches my name, this is what they'll find. Julian's phone buzzed insistently. His PR team, his lawyers, his board members, everyone wanting to know how to handle the scandal. He silenced it all. Then we change the narrative. We tell the truth. The truth. Holofera shook her head. That I'm your assistant, who works hard and goes home to take care of her sick brother? That's not sexy enough to compete with their lies. No, the truth that I fell in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. Holofera's eyes widened, her breath catching. What did you say? Julian ran his hands through his hair, suddenly feeling more vulnerable than he had in years. I didn't plan to tell you like this. I wanted to wait until the crisis was over, until I could do it properly. But sitting here, watching you hurt because of my world, my enemies, I realize I can't wait anymore. Julian, you don't love me? You barely tolerate me most days. That's not true and hasn't been for weeks. He moved closer, his voice urgent. Yes, I was terrible to you at first. Yes, I questioned your every move and treated you with suspicion you never deserved. But somewhere between your quiet competence and your fierce dedication to your brother, between your refusal to accept unearned gifts and your ability to see through my defenses, I fell for you. Holofera stood abruptly, pacing the small room. This is insane. You're a billionaire. I'm a struggling art student who can barely keep her head above water. We live in different worlds. I used to think that mattered. I used to think wealth and status were what separated people into categories. But you've shown me something different. You've shown me that integrity, kindness, and strength of character matter more than any bank balance. He stood too, closing the distance between them. When I'm with you, I'm not Julian Hawthorne, the CEO. I'm just a man who wants to be better than he was. I'm scared, she whispered. What if Vincent is right? What if I am just a poor girl reaching above her station? Then we're all reaching. Every single one of us trying to be more than our circumstances, to build something meaningful. There's no shame in that. He cupped her face gently, wiping away a tear with his thumb. But you're not reaching, Holofera. You're standing exactly where you belong on your own merit and your own strength. She searched his eyes, looking for any hint of deception or pity. What she found instead was raw honesty and something that looked terrifyingly like love. If we do this, if we're together, it won't be easy. People will always assume the worst. They'll say I'm using you, that you're slumming. We'll be scrutinized constantly. Let them talk. I spent years hiding behind walls to protect myself from being hurt. But the irony is, those walls didn't protect me at all. They just made me lonely and bitter. You walked into my life and slowly dismantled every defense I had. You made me remember what it feels like to trust someone, to care about someone beyond myself. Holofera felt her own walls crumbling. You really hurt me, you know? Those first weeks, the things you said, the way you looked at me like I was already guilty. I know, and I'm so sorry. If I could go back and change it, I would. But I can't. All I can do is promise to spend every day proving that I'm not that man anymore. That I see you for who you really are, an incredibly strong, compassionate, talented woman who deserves so much better than the hand life dealt her. I don't need better. I just need honest. Then I'll be honest. I'm terrified right now. Terrified that I've ruined any chance I had with you. Terrified that my baggage and my world will only bring you more pain. But I'm more terrified of not taking this chance, of letting you walk away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. She closed the final distance between them, her hands finding his. I'm terrified too, of being hurt again, of not being enough, of disappointing Timothy by making a choice based on my heart instead of practical necessity. What does your heart want? Halafera took a shaky breath. It wants to believe that this is real, that a man like you could actually care about a woman like me, that we could build something together despite everything against us. Then believe it, because it's the truest thing I've ever felt. He kissed her then, soft and tentative at first, as if she might shatter. But when she kissed him back, it deepened into something profound, a promise and an apology and a beginning all at once. When they finally broke apart, Halafera rested her forehead against his. What do we do about Vincent? About the articles? We hold a press conference. Today we tell everyone exactly who you are and what you mean to me. No hiding, no spinning, just the truth. That's a terrible PR strategy, he laughed. Probably. But I'm done playing games. If I've learned anything from you, it's that honesty is its own power. That afternoon, Julian called an emergency press conference at Hawthorne Technologies. The media descended like vultures, expecting scandal and fireworks. What they got instead was something entirely different. Julian stood at the podium, Halafera beside him, their hands clasped together. I've called you here today to address the rumors circulating about Ms. Chen and myself. Yes, Halafera works as my personal assistant. Yes, we've spent considerable time together over the past months. And yes, I've fallen in love with her. The cameras flashed wildly. Reporters shouted questions. Julian raised his hand for silence. When Halafera first came to work for me, I treated her terribly. I was suspicious, cruel, and completely unfair. I judged her based on my own past hurts rather than seeing her for who she actually is. A woman of extraordinary character who works tirelessly to support her younger brother's medical treatments. A woman who has never once asked me for anything beyond her earned salary. A woman who turned down expensive gifts because she values her integrity more than material gain. He turned to look at Halafera, his voice softening. She taught me that not everyone has hidden agendas. That trust is earned through consistent actions, not suspicious vigilance. That love requires vulnerability, not protection. The smear campaign against her is designed to hurt me, but all it's done is make me more certain that she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Halafera stepped forward, her voice clear despite her nervousness. I won't pretend this is a normal situation. I'm very aware of the differences in our circumstances, but I didn't pursue Mr. Hawthorne. I didn't scheme or manipulate. I simply did my job to the best of my ability, and somewhere along the way, we discovered we cared about each other. If that makes me a gold digger in your eyes, then your definition needs examining. Theodore Blackwell, watching from the audience, smiled broadly. Mrs. Patterson, seated beside him, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. The questions came rapid fire after that. Some supportive, others skeptical. But Julian and Halafera answered them together, their united front making it clear this wasn't a scandal. It was a love story. Vincent Carver's plan backfired spectacularly. Public opinion, which had been turning against Halafera, swung dramatically in her favor. People were moved by her story, by Timothy's illness, by Julian's honest admission of his own faults. The narrative shifted from gold digger seduces billionaire to cynical billionaire learns to love again. 3 months later, Timothy's treatments showed remarkable improvement. Julian had quietly connected them with the best specialists and covered the costs, though he swore Halafera to secrecy. It's not charity, he insisted. It's family taking care of family. Halafera returned to her art studies part-time. With Julian's encouragement and financial support that she accepted only after he structured it as an investment in a future artist. Her first gallery showing featured portraits of the people who mattered most. Timothy, laughing despite his illness. Mrs. Patterson in her kitchen, Julian with his walls finally down. On the night of her gallery opening, Julian pulled her aside into a quiet corner. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small box. Holofera's heart hammered. "Julian, if that's what I think it is, it's not. Not yet. Open it." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet engraved with a simple phrase, "Walls can fall." It's to remind us both that the barriers we build to protect ourselves often just keep us prisoners. "You freed me from mine, Holofera. You showed me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's courage." She clasped the bracelet around her wrist, blinking back tears. "You freed me too. From the belief that I had to do everything alone, that asking for help was failure, that people like you and I couldn't possibly understand each other. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Two broken people who somehow made each other whole." "Not broken," she corrected. "Just human. Complicated, flawed, scared, but trying." He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then finally her lips. "I love you, Holofera-chen. Not despite your circumstances, but because of how you've faced them. Not despite our differences, but because of how you've taught me to see beyond them. I love you too, Julian Hawthorne. Even when you're stubborn and arrogant and frustratingly overprotective. Especially then. Especially then." Across the gallery, Timothy chatted excitedly with art critics about his sister's work. Mrs. Patterson showed Theodore photos on her phone, both of them beaming with pride. Vincent Carver had quietly retreated after his plan collapsed. His reputation damaged far more than Julian's had ever been. The story of the billionaire and his assistant became legend in their circles. But not for the reasons the gossip sites had hoped. It became a reminder that first impressions can be wrong, that people can change, and that love sometimes blooms in the most unexpected places years later. When their children asked how they met, Julian and Holofera would share the whole story. The good and the bad, the cruelty and the redemption. Because they both understood that the beauty of their relationship wasn't that it had been easy, but that they'd chosen each other despite everything. "You're nothing but a gold digger," Julian had once said. His words dripping with contempt, but a midnight confession changed everything, revealing that sometimes the person we judge most harshly is exactly the person we need most. And sometimes, admitting we were wrong is the first step toward becoming right in the end. Julian's walls didn't just fall, they transformed into bridges. And Holofera's quiet strength didn't just endure, it flourished. Together, they built something neither could have achieved alone. A love based not on perfection, but on honest, vulnerable, courageous authenticity. The midnight confession hadn't just changed Julian's opinion of Holofera. It had changed his understanding of himself, of what mattered, of what it meant to truly see another person. And in being seen, in being known, despite all his flaws and fears, he finally found the peace that had eluded him for so long. "I was wrong about you," he whispered to her on their wedding night. 2 years after that first terrible day in his office. "I know," she whispered back, smiling. "But you figured it out eventually. That's what matters." And it was. This story explores themes of prejudice, redemption, and the courage it takes to admit when we're wrong. Julian's journey from cynical billionaire to vulnerable partner mirrors. Holofera's journey from defensive survivor to trusting lover. Both had to overcome their fears, their past hurts, and their own preconceptions to find each other. The midnight confession wasn't just Julian admitting his feelings. It was him confessing his failures, his wounds, and his desire to be better. True change requires acknowledging past mistakes. And true love requires accepting someone's whole story, including the chapters that aren't pretty.